Hello everyone, I'm Dr. Sapna Dadwal. I'm working as a professor in the Department of Management at St. Andrews Institute of Technology and Management. This is lecture 26 of Business Law. This subject is taught in BBA 4th semester. In the last lecture, I have already discussed with you the IT Act 2000, that is Information Technology Act 2000. In that lecture, we have discussed IT Act, objectives of Act, application of Act, and digital certificates, digital signature certificates, and digital meaning of digital signatures, and few definitions which are related to IT Act 2000. So in this in this lecture, the topics I am going to cover are electronic signatures, that is meaning of electronic signatures, then electronic governance, objectives and need of e-governance, significance of e-governance, then barriers and challenges to e-governance. Another topic is also there, controlling and authorities. Controlling and certifying authorities. So I'm going to discuss their powers and their functions also in this lecture. So I'm starting with the meaning of electronic signature. Electronic signature means the authentication of any electronic record by a subscriber by means of the electronic technique as specified under the second schedule of IT Act 2000. Now I'm starting with electronic governance, that is called as e-governance. So governance means the exercise of political authority and the use of institutional resources to manage society's problems and affairs. E-governance is the application of information and communication technologies to transform the efficiency, effectiveness, transparency, and accountability of informational transactional changes within the government, agencies of national, state, municipal, and local level to empower citizens through access and use of information. So this is the definition of e-governance as per the IT Act. Now, e-governance is a transition process from conventional to people-oriented proactive electronic system. So this is a big change in the mindset of people. E-governance is a big change in the mindset of people. Putting it in a positive way, it is not a change but a transition. It may not be achievable unless it slowly evolves around the people or among the people. So all communities of people should be attached or attracted towards the e-governance system. To accept this transition process, the communities or the people need to be trained and educated. The electronic media should be user-friendly and accessible by different communities, including the disabled and underprivileged too. This is called transition management system of e-governance. So, objectives of e-governance. These are the objectives of e-governance: to build service around citizen choice. The first objective is to build services around the citizen's choice. Second is to make government more accessible. So with e-governance, people can ask questions for government, and their access to the government will be more easy. Then third one is facilitate social inclusion. Then provide information responsibly. So this is the objective of e-governance. Then use government resources effectively. Then reduce unnecessary government spendings. Deliver online services. Involve citizens in the governing process. So these are the objectives of e-governance. Now, need of e-governance. Why there is a need arised for e-governance, that is electronic governance. The first is to improve quality of governance. With the advent of e-governance, we can improve the quality of governance because more people can access to the government and ask questions about the working of the government. Then second one is to provide new governance product services. And third one is to enhance participation of people in the governance. Then to bring new section of the society under the governance sphere, including those who are most likely to remain excluded, namely the poor, the illiterate, indigenous people, the migrant and displaced people. So the need is to bring them and in the section of society which can ask questions from the government, so which can govern the government. Then significance of next topic is significance of e-governance. The first is to reduce significance is to reduce record keeping. Second significance is it reduces the filing system. It automates the governance process. It eliminates the hierarchy and delays in government. It makes the governance more transparent, enhances the efficiency in public services. It empowers the citizens. It helps in taking strategic decisions at a proper time. So I'm starting with first. Record keeping and reduction in files. So large amount of information can be stored in small disk and can be retrieved as per the requirement. So thus use of ICT may save valuable records from damage and stores large information and save office space. So it reduces the filing system and it also reduces the record keeping. Now the second is automation of processes. So many of the administrative processes can be automated with use of ICT to save human labor. So thus it saves the filing system. Earlier to e-governance, there a lot of human labor were wasted in filing system. Then second is it automates the governance process. So coordination, supervision, integration of administrative personal processes and institution is made effective and cost effective through the use of ICT. That is, with the help of e-governance, this is supervision, coordination, integration becomes easy. So it automates all the governance processes. Then it eliminates the hierarchy and delay also in the government. Elimination of hierarchy and delay caused by hierarchical processes through the methods of e-governance, administration largely function through the various level of these administration hierarchies can be eliminated and delays can be eliminated and the decision can be taken more and at proper time. Then next one is it makes the governance more transparent. Change toward transparent and accountable administrative culture can be brought about with the use of modern information technology. The secretive, non-responsive, self-centered and other dysfunctional aspect of bureaucratic culture can be corrected through this. So e-governance makes it more transparent. Now everyone, all the people can have access to the information which was earlier not possible for general public to have the information. Now the next is better quality and effective delivery of public services. So it enhances the efficiency in public services. Better quality and effective delivery of public services can be ensured with the process of e-governance. The government can deliver quality services to citizens with greater accountability, responsiveness and sensitivity through the use of information or ICT based methods and tools. Then the e-governance processes and practices empower citizens by providing them opportunity to participate in decision making or access to information and transparency in the administrative operation. So it empowers the citizen. E-governance empowers citizen. It gives powers to the citizen to ask question, to make decision and to have access to the information which earlier was not possible for the common people to have it. Then last one is it helps the people in taking strategic decisions at appropriate time. The present age of globalization and liberalization is the age of competition in every field. Any administrative organization can gain competitive edge over others by effective and proper use of e-governance processes. The strategic information system based on ICT or based on information technology, so the decision can be taken at a proper time. Now the next topic is barrier to e-governance. Though e-governance has a lot of significance, but there are some barriers too for the e-governance. The first one is low broadband penetration. Low broadband penetration actually decrease the uses of e-governance. So in all the past, it is not possible to have high broadband facilities. Then second is high cost of e-governance. The e-governance is a very costly affair. Then its high cost actually it's a challenge to the e-governance or barrier also. It is a barrier and challenge to the e-governance. Then computer knowledge must to use e-governance facilities. If a government wants to bring all the communities to close to e-governance, then all people they should have computer knowledge. They should have basic computer knowledge. Only then they will be able to use the services of e-governance. So computer knowledge is a barrier to e-governance. Then there are some privacy and trust issues also. So these privacy and trust issues are also barriers to e-governance. Now the next topic is challenges of e-governance. Data system infrastructure. The first one is data system and infrastructure readiness is a challenge to e-governance. For using or for taking benefit of e-governance, there should be data system infrastructure in the country. Then second one is legal infrastructure readiness is another challenge to e-governance. To redress complaints of the aggrieved parties, sufficient legal infrastructure should be ready to deal with problems of complaints, and sufficient laws, regulation should be there in the country to deal with problems of people. Then next one is institutional infrastructure readiness. E-governance can only be progressed if the institution exists to act as a focus of awareness and to act as a means to facilitate e-governance. Then human infrastructure readiness. Human infrastructure readiness are the attitude, knowledge and skills of people working in public sector who are prime members or who are primarily responsible to implement and sustain e-governance initiatives. So their skills, attitudes are very important. So human infrastructure readiness is again a challenge to e-governance. Then technological infrastructure readiness. There should be people and adequate technology infrastructure in the country to implement e-governance. Then leadership and strategic thinking readiness in the people. So it is again a challenge. The leadership and strategic thinking readiness. So people who are responsible, they should have proper a positive thinking towards their attitude should be positive towards the e-governance. Unless or until they don't have e-governance doesn't have proper leadership, proper readiness in the people, this e-governance cannot be properly implemented. The next topic is electronic record. Electronic record means data record or data generated, image or sound stored, received or sent in an electronic form, or microfilm or computer generated microfiche. This is the definition which is given in section 2 S5T Act 2000. So this is the definition of electronic record, meaning of electronic record. Now the next topic is controlling and certifying authority. So certifying authorities are professional agencies, individuals or corporate bodies which possess the technical skills to issue digital signature certificate to those who wants to send secure electronic records and digital signature. National Information Center, NIC, and TCS, Tata Consultancy Services, are the leading license certifying authorities in India. So now appointment of controller and other officers. The central government may, by notification in the official gazette, appoint a controller of certifying authorities for the purpose of this act, and may also be same or subsequent notification appoint such number of deputy controllers and assistant controllers as it deems fit. Now the functions, next topic is functions of controller. This is given in section 18 of the IT Act. The first function, there are some main function of controllers are to exercise supervision over the activities of certifying authorities, laying down standards to be maintained by certifying authorities, specifying the qualification and experience of employees of certifying authorities, specifying the content of written, printed, or visual materials and advertisement that may be distributed, then specifying the form and content of digital signature certificate, then facilitating the establishment of electronic system, resolving the conflicts, interest between certifying authorities and the subscribers, then laying down duties of certifying authorities, then maintaining a database containing the disclosure record of every certifying authority. Now functions and powers of certifying authority. First is issue of digital signature certificate. This is first function, to issue digital signature certificate. Then suspension of certificate. Then revocation of digital signature certificate. Then notice of suspension of revocation. I'm starting with the issue of digital signature certificate. The certifying authority shall issue a digital signature certificate to an applicant if the application is made in a proper manner. So according to section 36, the certifying authority has to make declaration while issuing the digital signature certificate that it has complied with the provision of the Act, and it has published the digital signature certificate about the specific matters in relation to the applicant on which it has been satisfied before issuing the certificate. Now second function is suspension of certificate. The certifying authority may suspend the issued digital signature certificate under certain circumstances. The certifying authority shall communicate about the suspension to the subscriber. Now third is revocation of digital signature certificate. A certifying authority may revoke a digital signature certificate issued by it under certain circumstances affecting the subscriber, such as his death. Then fourth is notice of suspension or revocation. So where a digital signature certificate is suspended or revoked, the certifying authority shall publish a notice of such suspension or revocation as the case may be in the repository specified in the digital signature certificate for publication of such notice. So these are the topics I have discussed in this lecture. These are the questions which are related to the above topics discussed in this lectures. If there is any mistake, please do excuse me. Any writing mistake is there, please ignore the writing mistake. If any query is there, you can always contact me. Thank you so much.